Hey, welcome to the table. I'm Darian.
And I'm George.
And we're here to dive deeper into the themes, stories, and cultures that are central to our church.
All right. Hey, Darian.
Hey, buddy.
Welcome to the table.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the table. Here we are.
Here we are.
It's another week at the table.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the middle of a relationship series.
Yeah.
Last week, what do you think of last week's episode?
Dude, so good.
Really good.
Such a good conversation. So, I mean, just authentic, you know them, like authentic, genuine, like unafraid.
Shout out Grace and Isaiah.
Come on, Grace and Isaiah. Yeah, so good.
If you didn't watch it, you need to go back and listen to it because
Yeah.
it was a great conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We really enjoyed it. But this week, we're talking about self-awareness.
Ooh.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of self-awareness?
The words backwards. Awareness of self. Really scholarly thoughts on this one.
Very good.
No, on a serious note, since we're serious.
Yeah, totally.
For me, self-awareness, I think like it's an idea I kind of not wrestle with, but like my immediate thought is a wrestle of like, I'm self-aware.
Am I?
But am I? Yeah, I'm like thinking about it too much, and then I become self-conscious of like my self-awareness.
Right.
And so I think it does immediately just like make me think like, am I that? Like I think I'm that.
I think that's like the first step to self-awareness, though, is just asking like,
the question.
that's a good start. You know, it's just asking yourself, am I self-aware?
Yeah.
Because, you know, usually people that aren't self-aware will never ask themselves, am I self-aware?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not.
Because they're not. Yeah, like that it's like a very meta, like
I know.
like
It's a thought and a
inception
thought,
thing.
a dream
Yeah.
and a dream. Yeah. It's
It
like,
sounds kind of dumb, but it's true. You know, like if you're thinking about, am I self-aware? Then you probably have some sort of self-awareness.
it's like the thought of like a bad person will never think, am I a bad person? It's like you just are.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. And a good person would think, am I a bad person?
Yeah.
Probably a pretty
Probably
good person.
not, yeah. yeah.
But yeah, if you're self-aware, you probably wonder about it, and you kind of try to view life and make decisions and treat people with that, you know, with that mindset, with that perspective. Like, am I self-aware?
Yeah.
I think it's also good. You know, I was thinking about this topic, and you know, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've done it a few times. You know, asking somebody, if you're wondering, like, not just asking yourself, but actually asking somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, not am I self-aware,
Yeah.
but basically, like, how do you experience me?
Yeah.
How do you perceive me?
That's good.
You know, I've used that sometimes in leadership, like with somebody that I'm leading. Usually when I feel like there's some conflict, or, you know, there might be something that is a little off, it's instead of just saying, hey, what's wrong?
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like I might have done something, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But just opening the conversation, like, how do you experience me?
Yeah.
Like, what is your perception of
good.
me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it can be kind of a scary question to ask because you
Just
don't know.
laying it all on the table.
You know, usually you're not going to like the answer. But I think that's the point of being self-aware is like, you know, just I think self-awareness requires honesty.
No, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
So the verse that I was thinking of, this is the first verse that came to my mind. And this is like on my Bible app, I have like a bunch of different scriptures that are just highlighted that I always just go back and reference. And this is one of them. This is one of my favorites, but it's Romans 12, verse 3. For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned.
Yeah.
I've always loved that line. Think of yourself. There's some translations that say, think of yourself with sober judgment.
Yeah.
Don't think too highly. Don't think too lowly, but just think of yourself with sober judgment. I think that's a really good first step towards self-awareness, like we're talking about, is just like you're having to think of yourself, which can feel like a kind of like a selfish thing, but you're not necessarily thinking of yourself or what you need. You're really thinking of yourself at like, how am I operating and how am I existing in the world with the people around me?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And so not thinking too highly, but not thinking too lowly, but thinking of myself with sober judgment, like being objective, like being able to be objective, you know, in my relationships. What does that make you think of?
Yeah, honestly, it makes me think of, I mean, I've had conversations recently about this topic, just trying to like prepare for today and what we're going to be talking about. And I think like it's so easy to get, especially in ministry and like being friends with people in ministry, it can be easy to just be like, to gas one another up, like hype yourself and live in that like flattery, or in the opposite, which like as a worship team, we joke about this a lot, of like the idea when they're like, man, good singing today. And you're like, oh, glory to God. And it's like, it's true. But so many people use that as a deflection tactic.
My biggest pet peeve.
Yeah. Yeah. But they use it to deflect because, you know, they don't know how to take a compliment or whatever. And I think that like having this like level of sober judgment with yourself is so important. It like makes me think of the Barbie movie. Don't know if you saw it.
I did not.
Crazy. That's a surprise. But anyways, I really liked that movie, but I like whatever the controversy. There's a moment in it where like one of the Barbies is accepting an award and it's like a Nobel Peace Prize, whatever. And she goes, "Thank you. I deserved this." And I was like crying because I was like, that's beautiful. Like to understand, like, and I remember the first time someone said to me, "So you sing?" And I said, "Yes."
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do. I sure do. They said,
instead of like, well, you know, I dabble.
That is crazy. That I literally used that word once and got like cooked by a leader because he was like, "You don't dabble." And I was like, "Oh no." Well, I thought I did, but apparently I do not. So yeah, like I think having that, like, it takes a lot of maturity to reach a place of being able to like approach life at a even level of like, I do not think, and I hope I never am the smartest in a room, the most talented in a room, the most friendly in a room. I want to surround, but I know that I am talented. I am friendly. I am these things. Like I am smart, but I hope I'm never the most in the room. And I hope I never think I'm the best in the room. I hope I'm constantly being surrounded by people who are better than me because I want to reach their level. But that comes from knowing where I'm at, not in a like disparaging way and not allowing like insecurity to talk to me, but also not always allowing flattery to talk to me. And so like sometimes we need those words to bring us up or bring us down, and help us find sober and help us find that middle ground. But yeah, for me, that's what it makes me think of, is those moments where you like, you live in the flattery or you live in the disparaging and you can't ever find that middle. But once you find it, it takes you from this chaotic up and down to like just a nice neutral where we can all kind of be on the same page about it.
I think it's you know, we're talking about relationships. Yeah. Before we get to the relationships aspect, this is a very personal thing. Yeah. Right. Like, and I think that with anything with relationships, it starts with your personal relationship with yourself. Affects every topic that we're going to be covering. You know, it starts with, well, how do you know, we talked about affection, like, you know, affection with yourself. You're talking about empathy. Like, do you have empathy for yourself? Like all of these things, like you got to begin with yourself, not in a selfish way, but you have to take care of yourself, because how you are and who you are, if you're in any relationship, whether it's romantic or a friendship or a working relationship, whatever, who you are and what you are and how you act and how you speak, how you respond, it all affects the people around you. And so I think self-awareness is no different. And it's actually what helps us know who we are. And I think you put it really well. Like, if you're living off of the very high highs and the very low lows, you probably have a very like distorted view of yourself. And the sober judgment is so good because, like you said, it gives you some consistency. And it keeps you steady. Like if you have a steady self-awareness and a steady opinion of yourself, whenever high praise comes or high criticism comes, it doesn't rock you, and it really shouldn't. You know, somebody that's self-aware can find self-confidence and not be super affected by, you know, whether somebody is really gassing you up or criticizing you and saying terrible things about you. Like, no matter what, you're just like, you have the self-awareness to know, like, well, I know who I am. The big thing here is, you know, we want a godly self-awareness. I love what the Bible says. You know, there's this prayer that says, search me, O God. And I think that if we want to talk about self-awareness in the godly manner, you know, we want to have self-awareness, sober judgment of ourselves. It's not just I'm going to sit down and think about, well, who do I think I am? And, you know, what am I? But it's actually a prayer. It's actually going to God and saying, God, who do you say I am? Like, who am I? You know, search me. Search the depths of my heart. Search my mind, you know. Test me, because I want to know what what you think of me, what you know of me.
Yeah.
And that helps my self-awareness. And from that place comes a very healthy route into relationships and having that self-awareness in relationships.
Oh, yeah.
So my first question to you is, how does self-awareness play into having a healthy relationship? How does that affect whether it's like we said, working, friendship, romantic relationship, no matter what it is, you having self-awareness in a relationship, how does that help it be a healthy relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like choosing like where to build your house. Are you going to build it on sand? You're going to build because if you aren't self-aware, if you have no stable, no middle, then every high is going to boost you, every low is going to ruin you.
Yeah.
And like the moment somebody, like if I'm not self-aware in like that I am a good friend, that I'm whatever, all these things, then if you, I don't know, don't text me back. If Grace ignores my phone call, I'm like, they hate me and everything's over. And like, it's like we constantly have this joke of every time you're like, hey, can we meet? I'm like, you're going to fire me. And like
and I don't even have the authority to fire.
You're not my boss. Like, but every time like that, there is a piece of me that goes, or not as much anymore, but anyways, that would go like, great, this is the end. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think having your sober judgment towards yourself allows you to approach relationships from this like very solid place of knowing who you are, and allows you to allow people in and allow people to speak to you and to give you criticisms, to say like, how do you perceive me? How are you perceiving my leadership? How are you perceiving my friendship? But it also allows you to like accept the good things and not let them define you. So I think it just provides foundation. And when two people who are like, they know what they want, they know what they're doing, come together, like that makes magic, because it's like, now neither of us are like, Grace and I have a joke, like we'll like say something and be like, I'm fishing I want a compliment, or I'm not fishing, I don't want a compliment. Like we'll joke about it of like man, like I don't think I did good today, and it's like I'm fishing though, so I would let but like it's because we've both at this level of self-awareness that we can just be honest. Sometimes of like, I think I need a compliment, or I don't need a compliment. That was a joke.
That's self-awareness, like being able to admit that.
Like sometimes I just need a little love, like that way, or I don't need it, and this was a joke. So so I think it just allows stability, and it opens the door for stability and honesty, because like I know I'm not gonna hurt your feelings if I say to you, hey, what you just did hurt my feelings. And I know like it's also not gonna like change your life if I'm like, that was great today, buddy, because you're like, what you're good at. But sometimes it's still nice to hear it. So I think it just like provides the stability in relationship to be self-aware, to be conscious of yourself. But what do you think? Like how have you seen it impact like your relation? I'm not married, so how have you seen that like play in your marriage and like growing up and like siblings and stuff like that?
I think in any relationship, I've had to realize that, I think I kind of hit on it earlier, but everything that I do and everything that I say and how I respond to anything, like any action that I take, it affects whoever is in my close proximity. So, how I speak to my wife, like that affects her, like what I say around her, the decisions that I make, like with my friends or whether it's work, does that mean that I always perform at a perfect level? No, but I have the self-awareness to think through things like that. Like even if it's after the fact, like, I said that and that was probably like, that wasn't very nice. I think that's helped me a lot have deeper relationships. Because kind of like you and Grace, you have that honesty, about what you need, and I think that's so important. It's created deeper relationships for me, just being able to think that way, or really fighting to think that way, because it doesn't really come naturally to most of us. Because we want to be selfish. Like our default is to be selfish and think about ourselves, and we fight to think that way in relationships. Like, how does this, what I'm saying or what I'm doing or how I'm responding, affect the person that is experiencing this? Like that's self-awareness that creates a healthy relationship, because even if it's something that's not always communicated with the other person, on the receiving end, it still creates a healthy outlook on relationships, thinking that way, thinking that it's not just about me, and it's not just about how I feel.
Yeah.
I have reason to be offended about this or that, or have my feelings hurt about this or that, but I'm not the only one here.
Yeah.
And the world doesn't revolve around me.
Yep.
And so this relationship, whether it's, it's a working or my marriage or friendship, like, I am not the only person here. So that there's somebody else here that has feelings, that has thoughts, that has a history, that has a background, that has things that they've gone through. Like I have to be able to take myself, like, again, the sober judgment, take myself out of whatever the situation may be, no matter how extreme it may be, the smallest or the biggest, and be able to think like, okay, these are my feelings and these are my thoughts, but there's also somebody else here that has feelings and has thoughts, right? So I have to have the self-awareness that whatever I may be saying, may be doing, regardless of how I feel, is still affecting somebody else, right? So me being offended or me being upset or mad or, whatever emotion you can think of, like, I am not the only one experiencing something, right? There's somebody else here that is also thinking and feeling. And so that kind of helps me just, like, stay centered and stay, have a healthy outlook, because it starts to get unhealthy when it's just about me. Yeah. Right? It's not self-awareness. It's you're aware of what you want and what you need, but you're not aware of yourself, how yourself is affecting the people around you. Yeah. Right? So, like, that's not self-awareness, it's just selfishness, like, you're just being selfish in a relationship. And so I think that's a good way to have a healthy relationship, is to always be thinking about, how I speak and what I do. Yeah. It's affecting somebody. Yeah.
Well, also it's affecting you. Like, those kinds of things, like the negativity that you're putting out, like that will eat your soul. And, like, eventually. Yeah. It won't be an immediate thing. You may not even notice it at first, but, like, if you're choosing, I like thinking kind of like the comparison of, like, drunk and sober, like, using that word, like, the emotions when you're in that, like, something is wrong, you got hurt, you feel betrayed, something's going on, it feels like this all-consuming thing, and it like clouds everything to sit and feel that way and to blame the other person, to blame another person. So allowing yourself to a place of sobriety and saying, like, they said that because they might be going through something. Like, I don't know what is happening over there. And so, like, there is a part of us probably that is selfish, that says like, well, why do I have to be the bigger person? It's like, why wouldn't you? Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Because you're going to die to these feelings. If you let them, like, and you're going to lose things in the process. If you allow yourself, yes, it probably feels right because it's what you're feeling and it's so deep and in you, but that doesn't mean it is right. Yeah. And it does not mean it's the best approach to the situation. So having that sober judgment and, like, kind of pulling yourself out of it for a second and just saying, like, what's actually happening in the room right now? Like, what's actually happening in me? What's happening in my friend? What's happening in my spouse that is making them, because it's not this, like, it's not here. So like, more than it like, it does affect everyone around you, but it also eventually will rot yourself. You. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing that I've also learned in like, I think it's like a pursuit of self-awareness. Like, it's just this ongoing thing.
Absolutely.
Like,
it's a fight.
It's not like yesterday I used to not be self-aware, and then now today I'm suddenly fully self-aware, and it's like, it just doesn't work like that. Like, yesterday I might have been more self-aware than I am today. Like, it's this ongoing thing, and it is a I like to say a fight. You have to fight
I think that's a great way to phrase it.
Like, urges of just, like, your humanity of just wanting to be selfish or not think about, not think of yourself with sober judgment, like the Bible says. So you're always, like, continually fighting those things and fighting to be self-aware in whatever situation you may find yourself. I think being able to listen to somebody, kind of give you constructive criticism about yourself, and having the self-awareness to be like, actually, that I see that. Yep. That was a blind spot. Yep. But now that you pointed it out, I actually see how that's true. Yeah. And that's happened to me a couple of times. Like, I remember probably one of the most recent ones was, it was actually Pastor Paul. We were on the phone, and he like, I remember what it was, but I don't want to get into the whole story. Pastor Paul lit me up.
Thank you,
no,
Pastor Paul.
He gave me some really good constructive criticism about just like, I don't really remember exactly what his words were, but he was very honest, and I remember my reaction being like, oh, I actually could see that.
Yeah. Oh, you.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah, that's.
I didn't know it was
perfect,
me
perfect
up until this moment right now, because you pointed it out. But I know myself enough to know that even something that I didn't know for sure before, I know myself enough to know, nah, that's me.
Yeah.
That's true. I could see that. And I could have just been like, defensive and prideful. And sure, there was probably somewhere in me that felt that sting of like, well, like I'm not perfect. I'm just a person.
I'm just
but
a guy. Like,
yeah.
please.
But I think it's good to have this outlook on relationships of like, okay, yeah, like what I do and what I say affects people.
Yeah.
And I know myself enough to know when somebody brings up something like that, and I can say, okay, yeah, I know myself and I know how I can respond, and I know what my reactions can be sometimes. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That I actually can see that, and then I can act accordingly.
Yep.
After.
Exactly.
And it's something that I can be, and I become more self-aware because now I know something that I didn't know before. And I think that's also healthy in relationships, is being able to have these conversations. And it's not just like, well, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
And then you completely forget about it.
Yeah.
That's not self-awareness.
No.
Self-awareness is like, if somebody brings something to your attention, whether it's done right or not, whether somebody brought something to your attention in the most harsh way or in the most loving way, if you're mature enough to be able to take something like that and just be like, hurts my feelings, or oh, that was really nice, regardless of what your reaction is, and you can take some truth from that and then act on that in your life, it shows that you're growing.
Yep.
It shows that you're becoming more mature, right? Because our immature reaction is sometimes going to be like, well, I don't like how you said it. That might be true, but I don't like how you said it, so therefore I'm not going to do anything about it. Not for me.
Yeah.
If you would have said sorry, if you would have said it nicer, then
I could have heard you.
Yeah. Like no, like we're grown-ups, and so would I prefer for you to say it in a nicer way? Sure. But I have to have the maturity to be able to look at it with sober judgment. Yeah. Take my feelings out of it, right? And be able to say, I don't love how you said that. And I'm not saying this to you. I'm just, in my mind, I'm just like, I don't love how they said that, but there's probably some truth to this. So how can I take the truth and apply it to my life and change how I speak or respond or whatever, or how I act? I think that can be really healthy in relationships too, because the reality is that sometimes we're gonna criticize each other in a suboptimal way. Yeah. Like sometimes sometimes in my marriage, like I'm trying to communicate in the nicest way possible that I'm frustrated or annoyed or whatever, and it doesn't always happen that way. Yeah. It goes both ways. Sometimes I may be rude, and sometimes my wife may be rude to me, and it just happens. But having the ability to just see behind all of that and take the truth, it helps you keep going, as opposed to just like, you didn't say that the right way, so I'm not hearing anything that you're saying.
It's not valid at all.
It's not valid at all. Like, it just, the way that somebody says something does not make it lose its validity. Like, it doesn't make it lose its worth. Yeah. I think it affects credibility, and so we have to be very careful about how we're presenting things to people, right? And that's the self-awareness as well, especially in conflict in relationships, like how I'm presenting something that I may disagree with, or maybe we're not seeing eye to eye with, like presenting it in a way that is graceful and is putting other people first, but I'm still able to be honest, is very important in self-awareness. So I think that's healthy. What do you think how do you think the lack of self-awareness affects relationships?
I think having no self-awareness, imagine like, I don't know, don't relate.
I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't know anything about that. I'm super self-aware.
So, no, but I think it obviously will affect everyone differently, whatever. But I think it leads to a ton of unnecessary conflict and a ton of unnecessary like highs and lows. Like, it makes me think of like a middle school relationship kind of deal. Like, to have no self-awareness and be 12, like, you know, like that makes sense to me to like compare those things. Or like when my sister was younger, like listening to her talk about like boys and whatever. Yeah. And it's all like, yeah, we're probably gonna get married. And I'm like, there, what are you
don't even know.
Yeah, literally
anything.
Yeah. And it's like, hello, like, is anyone home? Right. So I think what it does in like my experience and seeing it, the experience of others and like young people, is it creates delusions, but it also creates huge pitfalls of like the second something goes wrong, the second, like I said, you don't text me back, or this doesn't happen, or that doesn't happen, then I'm like, well, it's over. That was it. Like, good run, but whatever. Like, and I think that when we lose our sober judgment about ourselves, or we just don't ever develop it, we make a choice, never develop it, then we do fall into those traps, especially in conflict and relationship, where we say like, well, you didn't say it right, so you don't get it. Yeah. And it's like, this is not hit or miss. This is not black or white. This is not pass or fail. Yeah. Like, we have to be able to look at this, like you said, the situation, and like take what's being said, and the way we interpret the Bible, of like, you interpret it against itself. You have to interpret the words that are told to you against your character and against who you are. But if you don't know what they are, then every positive will be, and every low will be the death of you. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it removes the space for honesty. It removes the space for vulnerability, and it steals and it kills to not have this self-awareness, because then everybody feels like they have to walk on eggshells with you, or everybody, like, you know, it just creates this very unbalanced relationship to lack self-awareness. Yeah. I think it creates a power imbalance. Yeah.
That honestly, the thought of that kind of freaks me out.
Yeah.
Like in relationships, like my sister used to joke about, like, what if I'm like not who I actually am, and everybody's just pretending that I'm this person, and I'm like not actually. It's like you're like overthinking this.
Whoa, yeah.
But sometimes it can kind of be like that, like, you know, especially, you know, you said it before, being in ministry and everything that we're doing. It's like so many people are involved.
Yeah.
It's all about people, and so much of what I do is people. Like I'm dealing with people. I'm building relationships with people. And I'm always thinking, like, what am I not seeing? Like, I truly want to make sure that I know that, I guess I just want to be self-aware, you know, and maybe I'm not always self-aware, but it truly freaks me out that I might be missing something in the way that I'm doing things or saying things. And I realize that it's kind of funny, because I realize that I probably am missing stuff. Yeah. And I love what you said about like you lose intimacy, and you lose the ability to be honest. And I completely agree with that. And I think that's what kind of freaks me out is the potential that it could be fake, that it could be not real, that a relationship could be not real because of something that I'm just not seeing or aware of. And there's probably like an unhealthy side to this, but I think there's a healthy attempt to self-awareness, because you know that in relationships, if there is no self-awareness, and you don't have the ability to have intimacy or have honesty, then that's probably not a very strong relationship. Yeah. Right? Like you're weakening the relationship by not being able to be self-aware. Yeah. And by not being able to just kind of slow down and think like, how am I affecting this? Yeah. How am I affecting this person? How am I affecting this relationship with how I act, how I talk, you know, how I respond to things. And I think that's a really good point that you made. I think that in relationships, when there's a lack of self-awareness, there's usually it's like the lack of self-awareness points to a lack of self-honesty. Yeah. Like if you can't be honest with yourself, then you probably can't be honest with many other people.
Yeah, and I think to that point, like, it makes you constantly the victim. So like any relationship I've ever heard end where the guy's like, nah, she was crazy. And it's like, okay, all 15 women you've dated in the last year have been crazy? Like, do you just pick them bad? Or
15 is 15 in a year? What? Who is this?
I don't know. I don't know.
Name names right now. I want to know.
No, y'all don't want that. But I think like it's just that idea of like you're constantly the victim.
Right.
You have to be. This is happening to you, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And so you're the victim. Everybody else is the villain in your story. And that's what it breeds is you live your life from a victim complex mentality, and it will bleed into the relationships around you, because eventually it's like, brother, she is not the crazy one.
Right.
Like this is what's crazy is your ability to find yourself back in this same seat of I am the one always being hurt and it's always about me. And it's like, no, like maybe, so I think it just,
I have no fault in this.
Exactly. I can't, this happened to me. And it's like, that might be true, but that does not mean it's right. And that doesn't mean this is where we have to live. And so like, I think that the phrase like fighting for self-awareness is so good, because sometimes it is a fight against yourself and against the things that have been said to you, the way you were raised, the this, that, and the other. And it is a true dog fight to get to a place where you say like, who am I and what am I and how do I live that out? Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that all of us have things that, whether we were aware of them or not, that we are not the best at, or we fail at, or just, like there's attributes and characteristics about us that are not the best reflection of who we really should be. And I think it's okay to admit that, like, because
absolutely.
we're human. Like, what it is that we're human.
Yeah.
Like, that there are things, there's ways that we act or respond, or things that we say that aren't the best.
Yeah.
All of us. There's nobody in this room, and there's not going to be anybody that's watching or listening that's going to be perfect. Sammy's over there shaking her head, saying that she is perfect behind the camera.
Y'all got it.
Turn the camera on her. There's nobody that is perfect, and I think having the self-awareness to realize that and know that you're not perfect within the context of a relationship, and kind of what you're saying is like not having that mentality of like that you can't be, that you're not faultless.
Yeah.
That you're always a victim. Though you might be a victim sometimes, like we always have a part to play in every situation and in every relationship. So I'm not free from fault. I'm not free from imperfection. And having the self-awareness to admit that, and then having the self-awareness to know what are the things that I struggle with.
Yeah.
If I can't have the self-awareness to know what those things are, then I am probably doing those things even more, and that's affecting whoever is experiencing me.
Yeah.
So if I struggle with being rude and I'm not self-aware about it, then I'm probably being rude a lot.
Yes.
And so the people around me, I'm being rude to them, and they're being affected by that. That's a very elementary example.
Yeah.
But we probably do this in some very deep levels that it takes a lot of fight to even become aware of it. It takes a lot of conversations and honest conversations with the people around us, and asking those questions like, hey, how do you actually experience? And some people might bring up something that you've never thought of, like that happened to me with Pastor Paul. Because if I didn't if I didn't have the awareness of that, I probably would continue to do that same thing. Right? So when in a relationship, when there's a lack of self-awareness, there's a lack of dealing with the things about you that need to be dealt with. Yeah. And that's a problem. Yeah. That will always lead to dysfunction. It'll always lead to a distorted relationship. It'll always lead to some sort of hurt. Yeah. Whether it's, like you said, in you, in yourself, or with the person that is on the other side. Like it's always going to lead to something that's not good. Lack of self-awareness is going to lead to a lack of dealing with the things that need to be dealt with. Yeah. I think sometimes the best way to realize what you need to improve on is not like isolation, but it's actually being with somebody, right? It can kind of serve as a mirror. Yeah. You know, like I've never known how much of a human I am than in my marriage. Like I have become so aware of how human I am now that I'm married. Now that I'm 24/7, I am with this person that can sometimes just be an angel, like that. Well, Rain is an angel. That's what everybody thinks. No,
and I will persist to think.
But like sometimes, just being in such a close proximity, it reveals a lot of who you are. And I want to have the self-awareness in that space to always be watching. And it'll be easy for me. I joke around about her being an angel, and she really can be. But I could also sit here and just criticize everything about her with no self-awareness, right? And I think we can do that with every relationship. We can sit down in front of somebody and just pick them apart without ever taking a look at ourselves, right? And if we don't have the self-awareness to know what we struggle with, to know how we're affecting people, we're also just tearing people down. And it helps us. I think what it helps with is it balances the way we view ourselves in comparison to the people around us.
Absolutely.
Right? It helps with that. What Romans is saying, to not think too highly of yourself. When you have the self-awareness, I realize that you and I are on a level playing field. I realize that I'm a human, which helps me realize that you're a human, and that helps me not think less of you in comparison to me. Right? You and I, we're both sinners. You and I, we both need Jesus. You and I, we're both saved by grace, right? And so that helps me treat you better. That helps me be better to you as a friend, because I know that in comparison to you, we're actually just the same people. Like we both need God. And I know how forgiven I've been and how much mercy has been shown to me, and that helps me in my friendship to you, right? So having that self-awareness of like, who am I in comparison to the people around me, and who am I in comparison to God, right? That helps me be a better friend to you. So my last question is, what are some things that, let's get personal. What are some things you've had to learn to be self-aware about?
Good stuff. Good question. I mean, everything. No, I
can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I think I was, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is, and I talked about it, I think one of the, like when it was the three of us, the three girls, a little bit about like that season I had to stop singing, which was terrifying. And I just wrote a paper about it recently, actually, because it plays into this idea of the ups and downs that lacking self-awareness will provide you. And so you and I had a very honest conversation where you were like, you didn't say, "Are you stupid?" But that's what it felt like. Was like, "Are you dumb?
Sure?
Like, are you?" You know what? No, it does sound like you actually.
No, I didn't say
No,
that.
you didn't. But it was like I was having like a breakdown of like, why am I even here? What am I even doing? I think I said that to you. Like, we had just recorded a podcast and we walk out and I'm like, what am I even doing in this room? I can't talk. I'm supposed to be on vocal rest. I'm talking. LOL. But like, I can't talk. I can't provide any feedback. What am I even doing in this room? Like, I can't be funny, and I know I'm funny. Like, I had other pieces I was self-aware about that then I'd lost. And I had been so self-aware about, I'm a singer, I can sing. And then I lost it. And I was like, well, then what am I doing here? What is the point? And it was that conversation where I realized, like, okay, like maybe it's time to consider I have other things to bring to the table. Because you said, like, you were not looking at what else you bring to the table. I was so blinded by losing the thing that gets talked about the most. Like, besides having curly hair, like that is the thing I'm known for, is I sing. And so losing that in a moment was horrifying. And so, so like it was like the rug was pulled out from under me, and then I was lost in that feeling, and I was swimming down that terrible like river of like, what am I even doing? So that's like the most recent one for me that I had to like get really honest and like kind of take a step back. In the Psalms, David sometimes says like, I came to myself. So like just taking a step back and looking around and being like, okay, where do I actually have impact in this place? Like, what am I at? Because like God called me here. God called me to Central Church. He called me to these teams. I can't sing now. So what am I supposed to be doing? And so, for me, that is like the most recent one of like, I had to realize, how do I bring value to a space? How do I, Darian, bring value to a space where I'm not singing, where I can't really talk and like make jokes, be funny? Like, now I have to find another way to bring value to the space. And it was a really like hard process, because I felt a little bit like I just let everyone down. Like, this is the thing. And we have a phenomenal team. Like, I don't need to be able to sing. You don't, none of us do. Like, we have such a good team now that it's like, I don't have to be up there. But then I was like, I'm letting everyone down. I've disappointed everyone, because this is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. And that I, like, the only thing I really thought I lost sight of all the other things I can do. So, that's probably the most recent one for me. And it was a crazy, devastating, but also like life-giving process to the point now where I feel so 360 that like I look back and I'm like, that poor dumb girl. Like, you know, like
dumbest girl in the school.
The dumbest girl in the whole school. That's how it felt. Like, that's what it feels now, retrospectively, looking back and saying, like, that was so dramatic, but it was so real to me at the time. It was so all-consuming. So
I love that. That's a really good perspective. I feel like, you know, most people, even myself, as I was thinking my answer for this question, most people will kind of go to, okay, what have I had to learn to be self-aware about is usually something negative. And you had to learn how to be self-aware about something that I would say is positive, maybe what felt like a negative way, negative experience because it was difficult, but you became self-aware of something that's actually very positive, and that's what do you contribute to the space that you're a part of. And I think that's really good. I think knowing what we contribute, what we bring to the table, again, with sober judgment and in a humble way, but knowing like what you contribute is very important because it lets you, you know your lane, you know what you're bringing to the table. You know what you're bringing to the table, and I think that's great. You know what you bring to the table aside from your number one claim to fame or whatever, like for a lack of better words, but you know what I mean, like your highlight, right? Like,
well, the thing everybody sees,
right? I think that's so good. I think it's because that kind of shows that you know yourself a little better than most people know you, because most people would say like, oh yeah, that's Darian, she sings, and you can say, yeah, I sing,
that's
but
true,
I do these other things as well, and that brings some self-confidence, and I think that's super valuable, and it's been very valuable to our team, knowing what you contribute and you knowing what you do. It helps this relationship that we have as a team, that you're not wondering and you're not sitting on the sidelines and you're like, well, I can't sing anymore, so I'm no help anymore, so sorry guys. And then you leave everybody high and dry, but no, you double down and you figured out like, no, I have other things to contribute. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Just to clarify, I have had to work on negative self things too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Don't get me wrong, you guys. I'm not perfect. Close. No.
I'm glad you said that because it was starting to sound really not self-aware.
I know. No. Don't worry. Went through all those way earlier. This was just the most recent one. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about you? What are kind of some of the things you
I'll share a negative one.
Okay, come on.
I have like a very
list.
Let me see. Let's ask a few people. Let's call some people.
Hello, Pastor Paul.
No, the first thing that came to my mind was when I was in college. This one was this was a heavy one. This was like a pivot in my life. Yeah. That it was something that I had never really considered the effect that I had on people. But I've been in leadership for a long time, even since I was really young. You know, I started really young in leadership. And it's something that I've always enjoyed and almost obsessed about because I just love doing it. Yeah. And sometimes that hasn't been a very healthy thing. You know, it might have been something that I was very passionate about, but it wasn't always necessarily healthy. Yeah. And I had somebody that I was leading a team with, and this was in college almost 10 years ago. That makes me feel old. But she said, you know, we had a very honest conversation. She said, you know, sometimes leading with you is like leading with a bulldozer. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
the immature,
like a good read,
right? The immature, dumb, college age George was like, yeah, that's right. And don't you forget it. In my mind, I didn't say that, but it was a very, you know, she said it in like, she wasn't happy about it. It wasn't obviously it wasn't
like snaps for you, George.
Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't a moment that I felt proud about it. I actually felt I felt ashamed, you know, because it was a very extreme way to put it. Yeah. And I think it's what I needed to hear. Absolutely. Yeah. It was actually one of the most, I really respected her afterwards because I was like, you just told me something that I bet a lot of other people have wanted to tell me, and they've never taken the time or just have had the courage to say it.
Or the care about you. Like,
or the care,
miss that part.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I you know, and to this day, it's something that I fight to not be that way. And it all leads back to that moment in that conversation where she just had the guts to tell me, like, It's like leading with a bulldozer. You're a bulldozer. It's like you have your opinions and you make up your mind and you're hard-headed. I'm like, yeah, check, check, all true. And I've also seen, you know, since that moment and becoming aware of that, of something that I had never considered. And if I had become self-aware of that in the past, I probably would have almost worn it like a badge of honor had it not been for that moment, you know. But since then, I've seen the fruit of becoming self-aware of that and working on it and finding myself in situations, in whether it's in leadership or not, friendship and in my marriage or anything, like seeing that side of me, like wanting to assert my dominance and share my opinion and just it's my way or the highway. And I can see it in real time. Like it used to be something that's like, I'm blind to it. I don't even know what's happening. Now I can see it in real time, and I like feel myself like slow down, consider. Consider not just what you think or what you believe is right, but consider the perspective of the other person. And I've learned how to, and it's taken years, and I'm still figuring that out. And it's been really good practice, you know, having all of you guys and, you know, starting this project and, you know, being the creative director here at Central Church, where, you know, there's so many people that have different opinions, and I want everybody to be involved, and I could easily just be a bulldozer. But I've just seen how when I slow down and I listen and I take all of you into consideration, we actually do much better than if I were to just bulldoze and have it my way. Like I've seen that over and over and over and over again, where when I choose to be self-aware and realize I know how I can be, I know how I can be hard-headed, I know that I can be stubborn, I know that I have strong opinions, but what does everybody else think? What does everybody else see? What are they hearing or seeing that I'm not seeing? And the end result is always so much better than whatever I had in mind had I just done things my way. And I've just seen that in so many different areas in my life where I've just had to fight for that self-awareness and realize, like, I know how I can be. Let me not be that way. Let me find a healthy balance to that and just hear people out. And I've also seen, you know, kind of, you're a great example of like where I've had to just like let go of control or let go of my voice and let you step into this. And I've seen not just the end result in projects and in things that we do, but I've also seen the development of people and how they become better when I just allow them to also have a voice and also have an opinion and also have a say in what we're doing. I see people grow and I see people walking in what God has anointed them to do. And that to me is so worth it. That to me is like the greatest lesson ever, is to realize if I'm just self-aware enough to get myself out of the way and make space for other people, I win and they win. And that's a win-win. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? You can't argue with that.
No, dude,
you can't.
So right.
You cannot argue with that. You cannot find an alternative to that. It always leads to that. Is self-awareness, is being able to make room for the people around you. There's enough room for all of us. There's enough room in relationships. There's enough room in working relationships. There's enough room in friendship. Is being able to make the space for all of us. And being able to have these conversations that lead to stronger relationships, right? Anything else you want to add?
You're absolutely right. I think just remembering that, like, it's okay that it's not perfect now and that you don't see it, or you don't understand the full picture now. You don't know how to get there. The important thing is stepping into the fight. It's saying, okay, today, right now, I'm making the choice of, I'm going to start paying attention. What triggers me? What scratches that itch where I'm in control and I'm in charge? Like, what feels good to say, but then later I feel really bad about, you know, like, start looking inward and start trying to find moments to step back and say, okay, God, what's happening? Why am I acting like this? Why are they acting like this? Like, what's going on? And just like take time to get a pulse on the room and get a pulse on yourself, and know that it's not the easiest option. It's not the most fun option. It's not the most gratifying option all the time, but it is the best option if you're wanting to commit to this like road of making these space for relationships. If you want to see increase, if you want to see increase not just in yourself, but in the people around you, in your ministry, your family, all these things, that it is the most worthwhile fight to enter, is this one to become self-aware. So
that's good.
Yeah.
I love that. Great conversation. Great conversation.
Yeah.
Good job, Darian.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
Thank you.
Cool.
Well, we'll see you next time at the table.